you should be glad.
Must be crazy, must be crazy, must be crazy.
Instead of saying thanks for the blessing, Trini.
This is Point FM's nightly news for Wednesday, 24th January 2018. Government makes final preparations ahead of Thursday's budget presentation by the Prime Minister. The Ministry of Education instructs principals to advise parents of the suspected measles case in the country. CARICOM's Marijuana Commission submits status report on marijuana use in the region. And the ex-U.S. Olympic gymnastics team doctor is sentenced to jail for sexual assault. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday evening. I am Phil George. Welcome to those of you by radio, listening by radio, and those who have joined us via Facebook Live, also our app and our website, pointefmradio.com. Final preparations are being made ahead of tomorrow's budget presentation by Prime Minister the Honourable Gaston Brown. The Prime Minister, who also holds the portfolio of Minister of Finance and Corporate Governance, is expected to spend a few hours in Parliament on Thursday reviewing his government's performance in 2017, highlight the challenges that were experienced, and detail his projections for 2018. The 2017 budget presentation was themed Building an Economic Powerhouse through Innovation, Creativity and People Participation. The contents of Thursday's budget has been largely kept a secret, with the Prime Minister refusing on several occasions to comment on what may be included in his statement. It is believed the Minister of Finance and Corporate Governance will speak on whether an increase in wages and salaries will be forthcoming for public sector workers. The Prime Minister has acknowledged it has been approximately 10 years since the public sector has benefited from an increase. Allocations for ministries will be announced and priority areas for the government will be revealed. Ahead of his 2017 budget presentation, Prime Minister Brown had stated that the Antigua and Barbuda economy is stronger today because his government had confronted the country's problems and worked diligently to turn them around. He said then his government had inherited those problems from 10 years of mismanagement, corruption and inefficiency by the previous UPP administration. He said then his government had not rectified all the problems with which they were saddled, nor had they overcome all the challenges with which they were burdened. But it should now be pellucid to all that they have grasped the nettle and are delivering the better conditions and prospects that the people have a right to expect. Lest the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology says it has instructed Sage's disease, which is characterized by high fever, cough, runny nose and a fine red skin rash which starts on the face and spreads to the body. Health officials are advising if anyone experiences fever with a rash, they should visit the doctor or nearest health center immediately. Measles is caused by a virus and is spread through coughing and sneezing. There is no specific antiviral treatment according to the Ministry of Health. However, the safe and effective measles vaccine that is administered as part of the country's vaccination program provides lifelong protection against the disease. The ministry is therefore urging parents and guardians to ensure that they and their children are adequately immunized against measles, mumps and rubella with the MMR vaccine. Persons who have not been vaccinated or persons who are not sure of their child's vaccination status should be taken to a family doctor or the nearest health center immediately for further advice and to get the vaccine. In 2016, the region of the Americas, including Antigua and Barbuda, was certified as being free of measles. Although the ministry says it is awaiting laboratory confirmation of the disease, they are saying we must remain vigilant to ensure that there is no in-country transmission. The ministry is calling on citizens and residents to work together to ensure that Antigua and Barbuda retains its measles-free status. Less than 24 hours after the family of the late Samuel Fergie Derrick announced the sale of the majority of its share in Observer Media Group, a daughter of the late Winston Derrick is warning members of the public not to buy into the company. According to a website established for the purchase of shares, it is noted that the offer is made in keeping with the philosophy of the late Samuel Fergie Derrick, co-founder of the Daily Observer and Observer Radio, and his desire to see a free and fair media in Antigua and Barbuda, which is beyond the control of the government and private special interests. It noted that the representatives of his estate believe that the time is right to realize his dream of a free media in the hands of the people, where the people have a greater say in how the country is governed and how their elected officials respond to their concerns. But Georgia Derrick, Samuel Fergie Derrick's niece, in a social media post earlier today, was quoted as saying, "Antigua, do not give your money to Observer Media Group." She posted that it is fraudulent behavior as they do not have the authorization and there is no proof of the value of the company, stating, quote, "You will likely lose your money." The Facebook post appears to be undercutting steps being taken by Observer Media's Chief Operating Officer Darren Derrick to save the company that is reportedly deep in debt and is declining rapidly. Ever since the passing of Winston Derrick in 2013, the families of the two brothers have been locked in a battle for control of Observer Media Group. In 2016, in a dispute over ownership of the company, a High Court judge ruled that Winston Derrick's widow, Kim Derrick, is majority shareholder in the company. According to Darren Derrick, the private placement is for 45,000 shares in each company, which represents 45% of all issued shares in the companies. That is the newspaper and radio. The pricing for the initial offering is $50 per share. Shares will be sold in pairs only. That is, one share of the Daily Observer Limited shall be bound to one share of Observer Radio Limited, resulting in a minimum purchase price of $100 for a pair of shares, one in each company. Kurt Michael, who was caught last weekend with an unlicensed firearm and ammunition, was spared jail time today when he appeared in court for sentencing. Chief Magistrate Joan Walsh instead fined the Bargain Centre supermarket manager $20,000, $10,000 for the firearm and another $10,000 for being in possession of ammunition. Michael was found with the illegal items after his vehicle was searched on Christian Street in Grace Farm last weekend. He told law enforcement officials he had purchased the gun and ammunition on the streets. The Firearms Amendment Act 2017 makes mandatory jail time, that is, for persons such as Kurt Michael. However, the chief magistrate earlier this month revealed outlet on Monday. He's further accused of stealing 17 cans of Vienna sausages, a quantity of Shirley biscuits and other items, and $138 in cash from the outlet. Claude Joseph, who is described by police as a career thief, was spotted in Gambles by police with 2 bags over his shoulder. The bags were searched and police recovered and seized the items. He was taken into custody and charged. The government of the Dominican Republic has announced it will open an embassy in Antigua and Barbuda in 2018. This was revealed during bilateral discussions held between the Honorable Charles Fernandez and his colleague, the Honorable Miguel Vargas, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, within the margins of the second meeting of Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the CELAC China Forum in Chile. According to Minister Fernandez, the discussions held with Minister Vargas were extremely productive as his government seeks to build stronger alliances with the Spanish-speaking Caribbean neighbors. The government of Antigua and Barbuda in 2017 announced its acceptance of the Dominican Republic's desire to open an embassy which would serve to facilitate increased cooperation between the two countries. Additionally, the embassy would seek to better serve the needs of citizens of the Dominican Republic living in Antigua and Barbuda. Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown is again speaking on the reasons why Antigua and Barbuda cannot, at this time, move to legalize the use of marijuana. The Parliamentary Select Committee is currently consulting with interest groups with the aim to decriminalize the use of small quantities of cannabis. Some participants at yesterday's meeting expressed the desire for the country to go all the way in making marijuana use legal. But the head of government highlighted several factors that must be considered, and among them are the country's obligations with the international community. Prime Minister Brown says there can be implications for the country if it should make such a decision.
We're not in a position to move towards the legalization of marijuana at this time. At best, we can legalize marijuana for medicinal use. I believe that that gives us an opportunity to have some level of legalization without violating our treaty obligations. And for those who may not understand the consequences of violating our treaty obligations, if we were to do so, Antigua and Barbuda would be blacklisted. And it has significant economic and even social consequences for the country. So that we cannot take the bold decision that as a state we can stand alone and go against international treaties and to expose our country to sanctions. So I want those who may be of the view that we should go to the route of full legalization to include the use of marijuana for recreational use, that there are certain impediments why we cannot go that route immediately.
He says while the government is moving ahead with decriminalization, it's also aware of its obligation to the citizens and residents and their overall health and well-being.
We're not advocating the use of marijuana. In fact, we do not advocate the use of any form of smoke, be it tobacco or marijuana. And I can say firmly, insofar as I am concerned personally, anything named smoke is bad, even if it emanates from food. So the issue of smoking is bad for your health. It has been proven. And I'm not saying marijuana is bad here. I'm talking about smoke. So in the bill itself, there has to be some provision for public education, a public educational program to dissuade our people from smoking any form of substance, and certainly not to do so in public spaces. So these are some of the things that we want you to take into consideration as we seek to broaden the provision of this particular bill.
The Honourable Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Well, the perceived negative effect the use of marijuana has on people who use it is being dismissed by the Rastafarian community. While Monday's marijuana consultation heard from supporters of government's decision, there were also those who chose to highlight what can go wrong with persons who smoke the controlled substance. But one popular member of the Rastafarian community has stepped forward to promote its use.
For a number of years, and I was not even aware. I had never seen any ill behavior or any indication that this person was in trouble. And as far as I knew that it was drugs. So I am attacking the person like, why are you using drugs? Until I heard the length of time that it has been used. I've witnessed these persons using the cannabis. I've inspected it for myself and then made a conscious choice to choose it, to try it. And I dare say, at the age of 14, nobody even knew who I was. And everybody who claims that they feel proud of any accomplishments in my past would be happy to know that this was all well after my use of cannabis. So anybody in the public who may know me, you've known me, having been a cannabis user for a number of years. I heard about the lowering of IQ, and I dare say that in my immaturity I made some folly choices in school and maybe did not apply myself enough. But having just completed teacher training in 2015 and graduating at the top of my class, I don't believe that my IQ has been lowered in any way, or my ability to study and to learn and to be a contributing member of society has been altered in any way.
That's Kai Davis speaking at the marijuana consultation earlier this week. That's a look at national developments this Wednesday evening. We'll take a break and come back with regional and international news. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for staying with us. The time is now 13 minutes on 7 o'clock evening time in Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, 13 minutes on 6 in the island of Jamaica. The Caribbean Community Regional Marijuana Commission, established to investigate the issue of marijuana use in the region, has submitted a status report, the Guyana-based CARICOM Secretariat has announced. It said that the 10-member commission, which is chaired by Professor Rosemary Bell-Antoine of the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies, is expected to present its findings and recommendations to the CARICOM Summit to be held in Jamaica in July. It said that the Commission had undertaken consultations in Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Belize, the Bahamas, Guyana, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname over the past 2 years. The consultations in Dominica were cancelled because of the passage of Hurricane Maria in September last year. According to the status report, marijuana has emerged as an issue of social significance across the region. It also noted just as many persons had important questions, wanted more information and education, and looked to the Commission's report to provide those answers. Some states in the region have already initiated action on the issue, and in those states where decisions have already been taken to engage in law reform, the call for more public education and a more coherent regional approach was made. The commission, comprising experts in the scientific, medical, legal and social science fields, as well as a representative each from the religious community and youth, were required by regional leaders to conduct a rigorous inquiry into the social, economic, health and legal issues surrounding marijuana use in the Caribbean and to determine whether there should be a change in the current drug classification of marijuana, thereby making the drug more accessible for all types of usage. The Commission was also required to recommend the legal and administrative conditions to be applied should there be reclassification. It has been reviewing information and secondary data pertaining to marijuana laws and legislation regulating its use and classification, findings related to research conducted on the medicinal use of marijuana, the economic and social impact, and its implications for the region. Jamaica's Minister of National Security, Robert Montague, says that the government has revamped the early retirement scheme for members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force in an effort to rid the constabulary of corrupt cops. Montague, in a statement in the House of Representatives yesterday, detailing activities aimed at reducing criminal violence and ridding the Jamaica Constabulary Force of corrupt members, admitted that corruption by a minority of JCF members has remained a significant challenge in an atmosphere in which there is an inherent desire from citizens of the country to underwrite the retirement program, and is prepared to ask the Ministry of Finance for more financing. In a wide-ranging statement in which he attempted to fill the information gap in Parliament triggered by the 6-week Christmas-New Year break for members, Montague also admitted that despite significant reductions in 5 major crimes last year, and the retrieval of 859 illegal guns and 21,764 rounds of ammunition, there were 1,616 murders and 1,469 shootings. He said, however, that the high level of murders should not cause the public to ignore the combined efforts of stakeholders in the security sector that have resulted in declines in 5 of 7 major categories of crime. Turning to the recently declared state of emergency in St. James, Montague described it as the government's response to an unacceptable trend in the country's murder rate. He said that so far, the state of emergency has resulted in the detention of 197 people, as well as the seizure of 4 firearms and approximately 30 rounds of ammunition. He said that among the 197 detained, 10 were wanted for serious crimes, including murder and shooting, and the security forces have also advised that 83 of the 197 are strongly believed to be connected to gangs in the parish. The minister said that currently there are 178 individuals in custody, some of whom are the subject of further investigations. Over now to Trinidad. Caribbean Nitrogen Company today announced that it has been forced to immediately shut down its ammonia plant on the Pointe industrial estate in Trinidad. The company says the shutdown is a result of action taken by the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago to cut off gas supply to the plant. Commenting on the plant shutdown, Jerome Dukey, CEO of CNC, said they had no choice but to shut down the plant to ensure the well-being of their people and protect their investment. Unfortunately, the action by NGC will negatively affect the future of their 110 loyal workers. It is also estimated that as many as 300 additional workers indirectly connected to the operations will also be affected. Dukey added that the situation is highly regrettable given that CNC has been in a dialogue with the National Gas Company for almost a year. The Caribbean Nitrogen Company, he said, had even accepted multiple interim extensions of their gas supply until yesterday at a detrimental cost to itself. The extensions were implemented to facilitate further discussions between CNC and NGC to agree on the terms of a long-term gas supply contract. The NGC has, however, been unresponsive to the many concessions CNC has made and unrealistic as to the global forces affecting not only CNC's exports but Trinidad's exports of ammonia, which must compete in the international marketplace. Turning now to developments on the international scene, ex-U.S. Olympic gymnastics team Dr. Larry Nassar has been sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison after testimony from nearly 160 of his victims. The judge dismissed Nassar's attempted apology as insincere, saying he would be in darkness the rest of his life. Nassar pleaded guilty to 10 counts of sexual assault against girls and young women, including Olympians. The 54-year-old had already been sentenced to 60 years for possession of child pornography. Judge Rosemary Aquilina told Nassar during the sentencing as much as it was her honor and privilege to hear the sister's survivors, it was her honor and privilege to sentence him. Because, she said, "Sir, you do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again." She told the pedophile, "You have not owned yet what you did. I wouldn't send my dogs to you. I've just signed your death warrant." Throughout the 7-day hearing, the stories have been strikingly similar. The former USA gymnastics team doctor would call the women in for treatment, but instead of taking away their pain, he stole their innocence. Some were so young they didn't realize until years later that they had been sexually abused. An appeals court in Brazil has unanimously upheld a corruption conviction imposed last July on ex-president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. While he can still take his appeal to a higher
They believe he and his Workers' Party are corrupt and justice needs to be done. Lula and his lawyers have vowed to appeal. They say they'll explore all avenues to get him absolved.
Australia's biggest bank is expected to pay about 1.9 million Australian dollars in compensation to customers who received inappropriate advice from financial planners. A regulator says it follows a compliance review of issues at Commonwealth Bank of Australia, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission said. The review had investigated instances where advice had led to losses. Australia's top lender has been embroiled in other scandals recently. More than 3,500 customers of the 5 advisors have been contacted by the bank following the review. Commonwealth Bank was still reviewing the files of affected customers and more compensation was likely, according to the watchdog. The bank said earlier this month that the vast majority of assessment outcomes would be made to customers by the end of January. Last year, Commonwealth Bank admitted it was late to disclose 53,506 transactions that allegedly breached anti-money laundering laws. It was also embroiled in a legal tussle over how much it tells shareholders about its exposure to climate change. Australia's banks and financial institutions will be scrutinized by a royal commission, the nation's highest form of public inquiry, later this year to determine the extent of alleged misconduct in the sector. That's a wrap on regional and international developments at 2 minutes on 7 o'clock. Stay tuned. The weather report is next.
For Antigua and Barbuda, and this is for tonight, Wednesday, into tomorrow, Thursday, the 25th of January, 2018. Well, a weak area of high pressure will maintain a relatively stable atmosphere over Antigua and Barbuda the rest of the leewards tonight and into tomorrow morning. Late tomorrow, a weak low-level trough will move over the islands. So we're looking to fair to partly cloudy skies tonight with a slight chance of a brief shower. Your overnight lows will dip as low as 24 Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow, look for skies to be just about partly sunny in general with a slight chance of a brief shower. Look for your maximum temperatures to peak as high as 29 Celsius or 84 Fahrenheit. The winds will blow out of the east-northeast at average speeds between 17 to 22 kilometers per hour or 9 to 12 knots. The sea state will be moderate with heights of 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Rainfall totals for the month of January at the V.C. Bird International Airport up to 2 p.m. this afternoon stood at 37.6 millimeters or 1.48 inches. The sun will rise tomorrow at 21 minutes to 7 and set tomorrow afternoon at 1 minute to 6. I'm Leonard Josiah reporting from the Antigua and the Barbuda Meteorological Services.
The weather report brings us to the end of Point FM's nightly news for Wednesday, 24th January 2018. Just before we go, a recap of the headlines that made the news. Government makes final preparations ahead of Thursday's budget presentation by the Prime Minister. The Ministry of Education instructs principals to advise parents of the suspected measles case in the country. CARICOM's Marijuana Commission submits status report on marijuana use in the region, and the ex-US Olympic gymnastics team doctor is sentenced to jail for sexual assault. That's the end of our nightly news. Thank you so much for joining us, those who did by radio and those who join us every evening via Facebook Live. Thank you also to those who joined us via our app and our website, pointefmradio.com. On behalf of all of us here at Point FM, I am Phil George wishing you a pleasant evening, and be sure to join me again tomorrow. Goodbye.